I was born in southern Rhode Island, grew up just about 1.5 miles from the beach. What a wonderful place to grow up. One of my favorite activities as a child and still as an adult today is beachcombing. I remember as a little girl always going to the beach with my mom and my brothers and sister and finding shells and coming home with all my little treasures and looking over them. I remember showing off this one particular time. I had these beautiful little shells and beach glass, and I was showing off my treasure, and my friend said, "My mom says beach glass is a mermaid's tear." And my sister, my older sister, hearing this, said, "That's nonsense. Mermaids aren't real." What? Mermaids aren't real? Or are they? Madam Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, I remember that day very clearly. It was September 7th, 1981. I had just turned 17. I was enjoying a warm summer's day at the beach all to myself because school was out and tourist season was over. My favorite town. Walking along the beach, feeling that cool sand squish beneath my feet under the water's edge. Not a care in the world because I'm 17. And all of a sudden, I trip over something and almost faceplant in the sand. I go back to inspect what it was that I tripped over, and at this end is a pile of seaweed, and I cleared some of it away. And there was an anchor with this rope going out, taut into the water. So I looked there, and there was a fish covered in a net and rope. I thought, my goodness, it was a good-sized fish. So I went over, and I had never seen a fin on a fish like the end of this fish. Tapped it a bit with my toe, and the fish moved, and I thought, oh my God, this fish is alive. I looked around the beach to see if anyone could help me, and I was all alone. There was no one at either end of the beach. So I reached into my pocket and took out my handy pocket knife, and I got to work, cutting away at that rope and that net, because there was a living creature underneath this rubble. So I cut and I digged, and I took more of a look at this tail. I'd never seen a fish's tail like this before. It was wide and flat, like a whale or dolphin fluke, yet it was almost as fragile and translucent and gossamer as a dragonfly's wing. Yet when it moved, I could feel the water move firmly past my feet, so it was a very strong tail. I kept cutting and digging away at this rope and net and split some of it apart, and I got to see more of this fish. And as I looked out into the water where the fish was covered with the net and seaweed, I saw that this fish was probably as long as I was tall. I was thankful that it wasn't a shark's tail. However, I still had no idea what I was dealing with. Cutting and cutting and cutting and pulling at the net and rope, I got to expose more of this tail. And the scales on this fish, I'd never seen anything as beautiful as that. It was as if each scale had little crusts of crushed up gems, amethyst, tanzanite, jade, and sapphire, all up this tail. So I kept cutting and cutting and pulling, and the fish started to thrash around, and I felt I almost got knocked over. And I said, "Stop moving, you silly fish, I'm trying to help you." "I'm not a fish," I heard. Okay, that wasn't my voice. And I looked around, and there was no one else around. I said, "Who said that?" And that's when the fish folded in half, and I found myself looking into the face of a girl about my age. Oh my goodness. I can tell you I was somewhat startled and speechless. And she said, "Me, please keep cutting. I promise I won't move." Eventually, I unfroze and kept cutting until finally I pulled her away, and you could see all of her beauty. She was covered in scales up to here, and what wasn't fishtail turned into the young body of a girl, and her skin was like pearl and opal. Her eyes were green and jade, and her hair was brown and floated like silken seaweed in the water. And as she wriggled out of the watery cocoon I cut away from her, she yelped out this joyful noise and skipped off like a stone in the water and started diving in, diving under, diving in and diving under. And I just watched. I was frozen and just couldn't say anything. And I watched this beautiful water ballet in silence. And as she came back, she stopped and she looked at me, and she came back and floated up right into the shallows where I was. And she said, thank you so much. You saved my life. If it weren't for you, and she wiped away tears of joy, and she handed these to me.